Hello and welcome to the fourth episode of the Season 2 MBC Sports Podcast. I'm Andrew Selover, your host, joined again by JP Eisenhauer and Connell Scruggs. A quick update on our picks totals. Connell, JP, and I are all very close. Connell and I 25 points, JP 22 points. Connell and I are 23 and 12, and JP is 22 and 13. We're going to start off with Marist football again this week. Last week, Marist took on West Hall, winning 45-7 up in Oakwood, Georgia. Guys, what do you think of Marist's performance last week?
Well, I thought Marist's performance was great, especially against a lesser opponent. You need to take care of those opponents, and they really played amazing. They were consistently good on offense and defense. Even when their backups came in, they were continuously being able to move the ball, and I thought it was great to see them not play down to a lesser opponent, but really stay at the level that they'd play anyone at. Because you'll see a lot of teams, when they play a lesser opponent, a lot of times when upsets happen, it's because you underestimate them and you just let them get ahead. You let them score too much and let them in the game too much.
Yeah, you play down to their level, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it was just a routine road win for Marist here. It just was really to get back up some reps going into the next latter half of the schedule for Marist, which is way harder than their first half. In the upcoming weeks, they play Denmark, Flowery Branch, and BT. So really, they just needed to tune up, and become more disciplined, stop the penalties, the excessive penalties. Connor Skelski threw for 3 touchdown passes. It's good for him to get the ball into the end zone by the air a little bit more. Lincoln with 2 touchdown rushes. It was really never close. Marist led 21-0 after one quarter and 42-0 at halftime. So it was really just a good tune-up game for Marist.
Great commentating on that game, too.
Also in the game, Marist, 2 fumble recoveries and an interception. Good to see taking the ball away on defense. And another good stat, 80% third down completion. That's up from their previous few games. Finally, the one other thing I wanted to touch on was the kicking game had a very good week. Richard Bowen, 6 for 6 on his PATs this week, and Ryan McGinley with a 19-yard field goal. So perfect this week in kicking.
One thing I will say, Connell was not there when we kicked perfectly, so Connell, you're not allowed to show up for the rest of the season.
All right. That's a little aggressive.
Superstitious.
Another good performance this past week was the offensive line. Rushing the ball, they were absolutely untouchable in the first half. Marist offensive line was getting 6 or 7 yards down the field before, they were getting, the running back was getting touched by the defense. So they were just dominating offensive line-wise. And defensively, only allowed 14 rushing yards. So defensive line was dominant too. They won the battle in the trenches. Now we move into this week as Marist is going to travel to Denmark in the biggest game of the season so far as the War Eagles take on the Danes. Marist enters undefeated. Denmark 1 loss on the season last week to Blessed Trinity. Should be a great matchup. Closest game should be the closest game Marist has had all year and the biggest test. We'll get to see how good this Marist team really is.
Yeah, like you said, it's going to be the first tough game for Marist this year. The games we've played so far have pretty much been cupcake games. So discipline's actually going to be really important in this game. We've been able to get away with the penalties, false starts that have set us back, but now it's going to be really important in this game to minimize those. And I think play action is also going to be really important this game versus Marist. Because Denmark, you saw against BT, BT's a very run-heavy offense, and so Denmark was expecting that coming into the game. So they would be really vulnerable on play-action passes, and there were a couple plays where the BT receivers would get wide open, but the quarterback wasn't able to execute and put a good pass on the receiver, but the Denmark cornerbacks and DBs got burnt. So, if Marist can utilize the play-action well, I think they should be able to get a few big plays out of it and keep Denmark's linebackers and DBs honest on the run play.
Yeah, and I think everyone knows about this Denmark offense and McLaughlin and Capers. We see McLaughlin, he is an improviser. He can throw on the run. He can run the ball. And then you see apparently he can punt also with good hang. It was good hang time and good distance, too. It was a good punt. Some better punts than we've seen from some opponents this season and their punters, so maybe you should become a punter. But but I think the one thing is the defense, it's a little bit hated on. I get they do give up some big plays and everything, But when you look at the defense in general, they're a very aggressive defense. So those big plays are going to be given up. But when you look at how they play, they have fast, athletic, and instinctive linebackers. And they have a very aggressive secondary, which causes some of that big plays to be lost downfield. But they play a lot of man-to-man off coverage, like a 6-yard cushion. The DBs have some trouble tracking the ball. The DBs aren't the best. But when you look at that front seven, their front seven is really, really incredible. And you look at how they've played. I mean, against BT, they did really good. You saw the first half. They really did play well against the offensive line and the running game for Blessed Trinity. And their special teams also, other than field goals and extra point blocking them, they played really well.
I mean, I will say the BT offensive line did wear down that Denmark defensive line, though. Denmark ended up allowing over 400 yards of offense, most of that coming in the second half. But BT ran for 203 rushing and 200 passing. So, I mean, for Marist, I think the key is you got to find what Denmark is going to shut down for you. Will they choose to put 8 or 9 in the box and try and shut down your triple option running game? Or will they back a few guys out, play some zone coverages, and try and shut down the passing game? And based on that, Marist has to play call and try and choose one to attack. I think if Denmark only puts 6 or 7 guys in the box, I think that Marist offensive line can just run over him, get 5 yards of carry. But if they do pack it with 8 or 9, the play action pass could be deadly. So Marist has to choose their poison based on what the Denmark defense decides to play. As for Denmark, I think their keys to the game will be they need to protect the football, and they need to give Aaron McLaughlin time to operate. If Aaron McLaughlin has time to sit in the pocket, run around, pick out his wide receivers, he can pick apart your defenses. He has Zevion Capers to throw to, obviously, and a bunch of other talented wide receivers. And with that arm of his, he can pick you apart. So Marist needs to get to the quarterback. And I think Denmark a slight underdog coming into this game. They need to protect the football. Last week and in the weeks before, they've turned the ball over a few times, so they need to protect it.
Yeah, and talking about that O-line for Denmark, they were pretty vulnerable last week. They weren't getting a clean pocket for him, and he was scrambling a lot. Although Aaron McLaughlin did look really, really good on the scrambles, he was able to get out and make plays in the open space to get them positive yards on blown plays. But they really need to get a clean pocket for him. And if they do, I mean, we were talking about it, Zevion Capers, that man, ooh, that's a bad man right there. An Auburn commit, his really soft hands. He can just he takes the top off the defense. Marist really needs to stop the deep ball if they're going to be successful in this game. They need to jam him at the line and then have a guy over top to keep him from getting deep. And I think if they do that, they can minimize the big plays for Denmark and keep the game within reason.
Yeah, that's been the one problem with Denmark. Their offensive line has played pretty bad all season. We expected them to be better than they are. One thing I will say, though, the problem with the high-powered offense like this is time of possession. The defense is on the field too much, and they're getting worn down, and that's why you see in the back half of games they're getting beat deep and they're getting beat on big runs down the middle.
As we take a look at the GHSA 4A Region 7 rankings coming into the week, or standings rather, coming into the week, it's tight-packed at the top. Marist currently in the lead 3-0. In the region. Flowery Branch and Blessed Trinity both also undefeated at 2-0, and Denmark 2-1. All 4 of those teams still have a shot to take the region championship because they all play each other coming down the road. I mean, Denmark's one loss to Blessed Trinity, but if Marist beats Blessed Trinity, Flowery Branch takes down Blessed Trinity, and Denmark wins out, then Denmark could be region champs. So it'll be interesting
really
to
tight.
Interesting to see how all that plays out in the next couple of weeks to close out the regular season. As for the bottom half, White County 0-2, West Hall 0-3, Chastity 0-3. Those 3 teams just bad luck of the draw as to their regions. I mean, they're playing in the hardest region in 4A, and that's what it is, and it's a struggle for them to make the playoffs every year. The best game, I think, besides the Marist game in 4A Region 7 this week, Flowery Branch at BT. Flowery Branch comes in number 6 team in 4A, and BT number 5 team in 4A. Flowery Branch 6-0, BT 5-1. Guys, who are you taking in this?
I'm taking BT because Flowery Branch they haven't played anyone so far this year, and BT has played two really good teams, and they've played well in those two matchups. They lost by 1 to Woodward in a game that really could have gone to either team, and they won by 1 to Denmark in a game that could have gone to either team. And I think they did a really good job of fighting back in that Denmark game. They were down a lot, and then they were able to come back in the end of the game, block a field goal, and score, which led to them winning. So I'm going to take BT in this one, also based on their experience in big games like this.
Yeah, BT having 2 losses doesn't really faze me too much. I have to take BT in this. When you look at it, the 2 teams they lost against, they were very close games, and they were very good teams. And when you look at it, I think you might want to say Flowery Branch being undefeated would give them the advantage. But when you look at it, BT is just an all-around better team.
I'm also going to take BT in this game. I think Blessed Trinity coming off the win over Denmark, they're coming in hot. I mean, as for Flowery Branch, in the preseason scrimmage, they lost their senior quarterback, Elijah Gainey, South Alabama commit, to a season-ending torn ACL. That really hurt them. Both of these teams are leaning on their running game a lot, though. I mean, Blessed Trinity, you saw it last week against Denmark, and they just ran the ball. Even when Denmark stacked the box, they refused to pass the ball. And beat Flowery Branch with a backup quarterback. They're also choosing to run the ball. It'll be interesting to see. This game really will show us how good Flowery Branch is this year. They haven't really played a quality opponent, so we'll see how they stack up against the top teams in 4A.
One thing I will say, I apologize. It is 1 loss. I'm thinking back to Denmark, and I thought Denmark should have won that game. I was just thinking they lost that game, but BT did pull it out against Denmark.
We've mentioned a few of the rankings in 4A. We'll go over all of them now. Marist, top of the tables in the AJC rankings, 7-0. Second comes Cartersville, also 7-0. Woodward 6-0. Sandy Creek 6-0. So the top 4 teams are undefeated. Blessed Trinity 5-1, and Flowery Branch 6-0. I mean, the top 5 have stayed the same as last week. 4 of the top 5 teams undefeated, and then moving up from 7 to 6 this week, Flowery Branch. Up from 8th last week into the 7th spot is Burke County 6-1. North Oconee up to 8th after being 9th last week. They're 7-0, playing St. Pius this week. Denmark 5-1, up from the 10th spot to number 9. And then out of the unranked up to 10 is Oconee County 6-1, coming off a win against St. Pius. 2 biggest games in GHSA besides the Marist game and the BT game, I would say, is Sandy Creek and Cartersville. Sandy Creek enters this game as the number 4 team in 4A, and they are 6-0. Cartersville, number 2 team in 4A, 7-0. Big home field advantages in this one. It's at Cartersville, the grass turf, loud environment. I think that'll play big. Cartersville won last year 7-0. Cartersville's defensive-minded, the 5.4 points per game allowed on defense. Although Sandy Creek, a high potent offense. They've scored over 28 points a game. Sandy Creek has never beaten Cartersville, but I think that will change this week. I think Sandy Creek goes to Cartersville and knocks them off.
Yeah, I also got Sandy Creek in this one. They looked really good against Troup County earlier this season, being in 44-7. And as you mentioned, that offense is just dominant. They scored 40 points in all but one of their games, in which they scored 28. Which, I mean, that's still a high offensive production. And they have 2 big receivers. Ahmad Jackson, he has almost 500 yards receiving and 5 touchdowns. And Alabama committed wide receiver Brian Branch. He has about 350 yards and 6 touchdowns. So they have 2 threats on the outside in the passing game. And I think it's just going to be too much for Cartersville defense to handle.
Yeah, Connell, they did have a great game against Troup, but I don't think Troup is as good as people thought they were going to be. When you look, they dropped another one, and I feel like Troup was a bit overrated maybe in the beginning of the season. They're not looking as good. I think I'm going to have to take Cartersville in this game. I mean, you look, they had one bad game against Central High School, but they still won the game. And they had a real big bounce-back game versus LaGrange. They really are a defensive-minded team, and I think their defense is going to be able to get it done against a high, potent offense. And you mentioned, Celo, the grass field. It's big because we had to, for Marist football, we had to practice on the front field so we could practice on grass so we know how it felt when we were going there. You see a lot of the fields have turf now, so it's a little bit different. And T. Webb going into his second season, I think just like Connor Sigelski, he's going to make some big leaps going from first-year to second-year quarterback, and I think he's going to pull it out in this game.
Probably the biggest game in all of Georgia now. Number 5 in all of Georgia, McEachern, 6-0, travels to the number 3 team in the state, Marietta, 5-1. Last year, Marietta won 28-27. I'm expecting another close matchup this year. First game between top 5 teams in the state that Marietta has ever hosted. And McEachern, though, last week, they probably should have lost to Hillgrove.
Yep.
Hillgrove got that one stolen away from them by the refs. A bunch of you might have seen that video. At the very end, they were down 5, Hillgrove was, and the quarterback back on the last play of the game made a diving lunge towards the end zone, hit the pylon with the ball, clear touchdown, refs ruled him down short, and the game over, and McEachern walks out still undefeated on the season. I think McEachern, that put a little scare into them, and I think they come back ready to play this week. They're led by a Florida quarterback, Carlos Del Rio. He's throwing to Clemson and Alabama wide receivers in Dakari Collins and Javon Baker. And in the backfield, he has Michigan State commit running back Jordan Simmons. It's a talented offense at McEachern, and I think they come back after a close game last week and defeat Marietta.
I'm going to disagree with you there. I'm going to go with number 3, Marietta. As you said, McEachern should have lost to Hillgrove last week. But on the contrary, Marietta continues to play the toughest competition out of, I think, anyone in the state. They've played 2 out-of-state teams this year already, and they've played them close. Their only loss is to a team from California, and I think it was Mater Dei. I can't confirm that, but Mater Dei is a top 5 team in the nation, and so that's a very explainable loss there. And they beat a nationally ranked team from Florida earlier in the season, so I think they just played better competition overall. They've played in bigger game environments like this before, so they're going to be ready. But even with that, it's going to be an extremely it's going to be a close game here because of the high-profile recruits on both teams. McEachern has 4 big-time D1 commits, and I'd say Marietta's 3.5 D1 commits because 3 of them, I think it's Michigan State, Boston College, and Alabama, if I'm not mistaken. And then the other one is Troy State, which I'm going to say half of a D1. But anyways.
They only count as half.
Yeah, it's still, it's going to be a very close game, and but I still think Marietta's going to come out on top here.
Marietta is one of the top teams in the nation. I really don't think I can pick against Marietta. I have to take Marietta in this. And again, I'm going to mention McEachern should have lost last week. You look at plays like that. I didn't know that NFL refs were coming to high school yet. I thought it was going to be a little bit longer. But I feel like McEachern should have lost that game. And I think Marietta is too good to lose this game to McEachern. It's going to be a great game, but I think Marietta is going to pull this one out.
As we're going to move into college football, it should be a great week of GHSA football, a bunch of top matchups, especially in 4A. We're going to take a look at college football now. Last week, South Carolina traveled into Sanford Stadium and knocked off the number 3 ranked Bulldogs. That was an exciting double overtime game. Guys, what did you think of that one?
I just want to say one thing before Connell goes. Anyone who says that they saw this coming is a liar. I have heard people say that they saw South Carolina beating Georgia.
I did not see that coming, so I don't know why.
Some people are saying that they saw this coming, that Georgia's offense wasn't that good. They saw this coming, but I don't think anyone saw this coming.
I mean, that was – if you're a Georgia fan, that's got to be disappointing for you because they had so many opportunities to win that game. South Carolina was up, and then it seemed at the end of the game it was kind of like an upset typical game, right? The underdog gets ahead, and then toward the end of the game, it all just kind of falls apart for them, and Georgia had a chance. And then they came back and scored the touchdown, and they had a chance to win the game in regulation. I think it was a 55-yard field goal. Now this is a point of debate here.
No,
but
it's not. You should not be kicking a 55-yard field goal in college. There was the right call to
it's
try
hot
to get
rod,
it.
Though.
It was a good call to try to get a 10-yard out route or a 5-yard out route, get some extra space.
See, I can see where it comes from on the first try, right? That you have two timeouts at the 55-yard field goal. You have one play to see if you can get him like 7 yards closer to the field goal to make it a little bit easier. but they miss that play, and then they go for another one, which ends up causing them a false start. So they get out of field goal range, and they have a chance to kick a field goal. Hot Rod has, which he's probably, I'd say, the best field goal kicker in the nation. And he had a chance to win the game for them there, and Kirby Smart's coaching decision didn't really – I didn't really like the decision to run 2 more plays. I would have just kicked the field goal there, which would have won the game for Georgia, and then South Carolina ends up finishing it out in overtime.
And, guys, now Kirby Smart in his first couple of years at Georgia, 8-5, 13-2, 11-3, and now 5-1. Mark Richt, when he started at Georgia about 15, 20 years ago, he started 8-4, 13-1, 11-3, 10-2, and then from there, Mark Richt kind of traveled into a land of mediocrity where Georgia was 8-4, 9-3 every year, and not really contenders. Do you see this potentially happening with Kirby Smart?
I do not think he's going to go into a coma of averageness. He's a former player. He knows how to get his team to react. I think that he'll be just fine. I think the main thing is he needs to go to Fromm and just fix that. 3 picks to the same corner. You can't do that in a game like this. And it was a good call to try to get that. Every team does it. Every team wants that extra space, and it's worth it to risk it.
Right. Yeah, no, I agree, but I'd say one play, and then you kick the field goal, right? I wouldn't go 2 plays risking the false start on the second one, which brings you back. You can go for the one to get you 5 or 10 yards closer.
I feel like if you have enough time, though, might as well do it.
Anyways, back to Kirby Smart. I don't think he will fall into mediocrity quite like Mark Richt, but he has made some questionable coaching decisions that have caused us to question him. See, he was an Alabama defensive coordinator before he was the Georgia head coach, and Alabama plays on the biggest stage pretty much every single year. So he's played in big-time games. He knows the situations before. But even then, I think as a head coach, when it gets late in the ballgame and it's close, he kind of panics a little bit. You saw it last year in the SEC championship. He tried the fake punt with Justin Fields. Justin Fields was never on the punt team for them last year. You saw him on the field, and you know they're doing something different, and that basically cost them the game, I think, last year in the SEC championship.
I think Tua Tagovailoa cost them the game, but I mean him coming in. Oh, sorry, the SEC championship.
Yeah, the SEC championship.
I thought we were talking about all the way back to the national championship.
No, SEC
championship.
SEC
championship. That was a bad call. I think they should have won that game. I think in that one it wasn't Tagovailoa, it was Hurts who came back and won.
Hurts.
I think Jalen Hurts. That was just him coming back and really making a game out of that. I don't think it was anything. I think that calls definitely helped, but I think ultimately it was Hurts coming back in the game and showing what he was going to do at Oklahoma.
Last week also in the Red River rivalry, Oklahoma defeated Texas in a top 15 matchup by 1 touchdown. Guys, an interesting thing in the Big 12, there's no like sides or divisions. In the Big 12, it's all one standings, and the top 2 teams at the end of the year go into the Big 12 championship. Do you think that Texas and Oklahoma will get their rematch of the Red River rivalry in the Big 12 championship?
I think they will. I mean, you saw this game. You know Texas is going to continue to win with Ellinger. He's really improved this year. And you look at Oklahoma, they had 9 sacks in this game. Oklahoma's defense, as I said last week, is improving and is getting better. We're finally going to have a defense in this division. And you look at CeeDee Lamb, he's averaging 21.8 yards per catch. This team and Texas and Oklahoma, they're both great teams. I don't see anyone in this division that can really threaten either of these teams. I think that they are going to win out other than this loss for Texas. I mean, you lost to LSU and you lost to Oklahoma. Those are respectable losses, and I think that this will be another rematch.
You look at Texas's schedule for the rest of the year, and they should really roll over the next 3 teams. They play Kansas, Texas, TCU, and then Kansas State. They should beat those teams handedly. And then the last 3 games of the season for them are versus Iowa State, Baylor, and Texas Tech. And definitely the last 3 games a little bit harder than the next 3 they're about to play. But the only team that could potentially give them a game is Iowa State, who's been looking good recently. But I still think Texas is going to win that game. So I think these teams are going to meet again in the Big 12 championship. And Texas has a chance to play spoiler. Their playoff hopes are all but gone. But they have a chance to spoil and take Oklahoma out.
Yeah, and nothing better for Texas fans if you come into the Big 12, if you win out and Oklahoma wins out, and you go into the Big 12 championship already having Oklahoma spoiled your playoff chances in the regular season, and then those Texas players get to spoil Oklahoma's chances, that would be unbelievable for Texas fans. And final game we'll take a look at from last week, Florida and LSU, a top 10 matchup. LSU ends up winning 42-28 in probably a closer game than the score actually reveals. Now this week we take a look at two of the biggest games this week. Michigan, number 16, travels to number 7 Penn State. Penn State's 9-point favorites, home of College Game Day for the week. And you have to imagine Death Valley up there in Penn State will be rocking.
Yep, white out.
I think that atmosphere and the environment, you already have seen Michigan has struggled against top 25 teams this year already. At Wisconsin, they got destroyed in a loud environment.
Struggled is an understatement.
I think they'll struggle again in another loud environment. I think Penn State covers this 9-point spread.
Yeah, I think Harbaugh loses to another ranked team. I think Penn State, you look at their offense and their defense, they played great against Iowa. That's a common opponent, and I feel like Penn State played Iowa better than Michigan did, although Michigan played very well against Iowa. I think Penn State's more complete of a team, especially offensively, than Michigan. And also when you look at the coaches, Harbaugh, gotta love him, but he cannot win against a ranked team.
No, he can't. I mean, he's 1-6 against top 10 teams in his Michigan era. That's tough there. And I'm also going to take Penn State in this one. They've looked good on both offense and defense. One of the top 5 in college football for points scored per week, and top 5 in college football for least amount of points allowed. And they looked pretty good against Iowa last week, so I think they're going to continue it into this week and beat Michigan.
And the other biggest game in the country this week is number 12 Oregon at number 25 Washington. Oregon only a 3-point favorite, and their only loss, however, is to Auburn, and they had a huge win over Colorado last week. Washington comes in inconsistent, but they played well against Arizona last week. They destroyed Arizona, actually. I think Washington will play a good game. I think Easton will get back on track. However, I think Oregon wins in probably a touchdown game or so.
I'm going to take Oregon in this one, too. Washington just hasn't looked good this year. They lost to a struggling Stanford team by 10 2 weeks ago. And Oregon, yeah, they've been on the way up. They've looked good since that Auburn loss on both offense and defense, and I think they're going to continue it, and they're going to beat Washington in this one.
I don't think it's going to be anything on offense. Obviously, Justin Herbert and everything. I think that the Oregon defense is really going to be the difference maker in this game. They are the number 8th ranked defense in college football, and if you look at the teams above them, Wisconsin, Ohio State, Clemson, Mizzou, these are all really good defenses, and I don't think that there's going to be really too much of a
Loves Mizzou, man. Loves him some Mizzou.
5 touchdowns on defense leading the college football, but enough about that. I think the number 8 ranked defense against Jacob Eason, who's been struggling a bit in the past few weeks in that Washington offense, they're gonna be able to beat him pretty handily.
So let's move into some upset picks. Connell, who are you going to take as your upset this week?
I am taking Arizona State over number 13 Utah. Arizona State's been playing well over the last couple of weeks. They upset Cal when they were ranked, and then they beat Washington State. So they've been on the rise. A good last couple of weeks for them. And Utah has that ugly loss to USC. And mind you, in that game, USC had their third-string quarterback in. And USC has struggled ever since. So after that loss, that kind of just made me question Utah and their credibility. So I'm going to take Arizona State over Utah in this one because they've played spoiler in the last couple of weeks.
And my upset pick, I'm going to take Washington State falling to Colorado. Washington State is a 12.5-point favorite, but Washington State comes in on a 3-game skid. They lost to UCLA in a game in which they never should have lost. They got blown out by Utah, and then they failed to get back on track last week against Arizona State. I think Colorado keeps that losing streak going for Washington State and pulls the upset this week. JP, you're taking Arizona over USC.
Yeah, there it is. Okay, we just got this part out.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
For my upset pick, I'm going to pick Arizona over USC. You look at USC, they're now on their, third quarterback? And if you look at Arizona, their defense and their offense, they're better than people are giving them credit for. They're ranked 4-2. They're 4-2, but they still are underdogs in this game by over 10 points. I think that Arizona's going to win this game, and I think it's going to be maybe a bigger margin than people think. I think it could be a touchdown victory for them.
as we're going to move into the final segment for the day, we're going to talk about quickly about the MLB playoffs before we sign off. One LCS matchup, NLCS is already over. The Cardinals, JP, got swept.
Oh,
man.
Feels good.
They got a dose of their own medicine.
Feels good.
Put up 13 in the first inning, and then they gave up 7 in the first inning to the Nats in the final game. That Nationals pitching looked unbelievable, but they went up against the Cardinals pitching. In the World Series, they're going to probably go up against the Astros or the Yankees. I think the Astros will beat the Yankees. I think no matter what, whoever wins that ALCS will defeat the Nationals, because I don't think the Nationals have the offense to compete. I think obviously the Astros have best pitching, and the Nationals pitching is pretty close. But if you take that Nationals offense and put them against Garrett Cole and Justin Verlander will win the Astros 2 games in that series. Garrett Cole will win the Astros 2 games in that series. And if one of them happens to lose, Zach Greinke will probably win a game.
Yeah, okay, let me just ask you this. What if the Yankees beat the Astros? Who you taking, Yankees Nationals?
I think the Yankees just have too much offense. I think that would be a closer series than the Astros Nationals, but I think the Yankees, they'll be going up against more good pitching, and we've seen they've been able to put up some decent numbers against that Astros dominant pitching staff. Nationals pretty close to those numbers pitching-wise. I think the Yankees would be able to put up some runs, and then that pitching staff for the Yankees, especially out of the bullpen, the bullpen's as good as you get in the MLB. I know they don't have the best starters, but I don't think the Nationals are going to be able to put up huge numbers like the Yankees are possible of.
Yeah, the Nationals just dominate. I did not expect them to dominate the series like they just did. It felt good. It felt good when the Nationals came out and scored 7 runs in the first inning versus the Cardinals.
Who made it farther, Cardinals or Braves?
That's not the question at hand right now. But honestly, if you would have told me that the Nationals were going to be in the World Series and the Braves would be out in the first round at the beginning of the playoffs, I would have been like, bro, are you serious? But it's a reality at hand, and the Nationals looked really good in that series, pitching, and they were clutch, and they looked good. I don't know, the offense just looked good. Anthony Rendon, he looked good in that one. Making his case for MVP, and I think the Astros are going to beat the Yankees. They're going to finish out this series with the pitching staff they have, and I think if the Astros face the Nationals in the World Series, I'm going to take the Astros in that one just based off their experience in the playoffs and their pitching staff. Pitching really, that's what gets you. That's what wins you games in the playoffs, and they just have better pitching than the Nationals.
Thank you all for tuning in again this week, week 4 of the podcast. This concludes it. Signing off for the day, I'm Andrew Selover. Thanks to Connell, Scruggs, and JP Eisenhauer again for joining us. As always, be sure to tune in tomorrow night as the War Eagles from Marist take on the Danes from Denmark at 7:10. The MBC pregame show will be live on the NFHS network, and then game begins at 7:30. Be sure to tune in and have a great weekend, everybody.